My dudes, another one. Another one bites the dust. I mean, there's nothing to say here. First, they take Cam Akers. Then they take Travis Etienne. Then they take J.K. Dobbins. And now another tight end that we love, Irv Smith Jr. Now, it's not official that he is missing the entire season. It's not official that this is a season-ending injury. However, he is at least missing the start of the season with potential to miss the entire year. Now, we have to kind of wait to see the route in surgery that they decide to take. If you read reports currently, I mean, the current reports are saying he is going to be undergoing surgery on the meniscus, and he's either going to be missing about 4 weeks or he's going to miss the entire season. So we're going to have to wait until later tonight until we probably have a decent idea. Maybe it takes until tomorrow until we know what route he is taking, until how long he is going to be out. But everything that I am looking at right now has Irv Smith Jr. as someone that, it could be 6 to 8 months. Now, this has to change how we are viewing the landscape in drafts right now at the tight end position, because we already had Adam Troutman, who we thought was going to potentially be out for the year. Now, Adam Troutman, not out for the year, but out for the beginning part of the season, which of course changes what you're doing in terms of rounds 13, 14 at tight end. And now Irv Smith Jr. was someone that was almost in that exact same range where now you can't draft him there. I mean, now when we don't have the clarity, I think if you're in a draft today, what you're actually probably going to have to do is I think you're, instead of going out there and drafting an Irv Smith Jr. in like the 11th round that I have done consistently, instead, I think we are actually probably going to end up having to get one of those elite tight ends. I think we're going to have to pay up and get a Kelsey, pay up and go out there and get a Waller, get a George Kittle. And I'm actually in a real money fantasy football draft right now. Now, we're only in the 4th round, and I was literally in this draft before we started the live stream. Y'all know I'm literally just 100% every single day of the week in a fantasy football draft. I can go through and pull this up, but I kind of want to see what happens to these tight ends, because I think now that you're seeing Irv Smith go down, I mean, if I actually pull up how many leagues I personally have drafted Irv Smith Jr. in, I mean, if I go through, pull this up, I have him in a ton of spots, because Irv Smith Jr. going into year 3, this was a tight end that, in my opinion, you had to be very excited about. And that if you actually looked at what he has done so far through his NFL career, he was actually drafted at 20 years old by the Minnesota Vikings in that 2019 class, the same class that had a TJ Hawkinson, the same class that had a Noah Fant. Irv Smith Jr. was a very exciting tight end coming out of there. And of course, if you're a rookie tight end, you're not going to be getting that much run to begin with. But at the same time, if you're a rookie tight end that's only 20 years old, I mean, it's impressive at the minimum if you're able to just see the field. And Irv Smith Jr. was able to see the field with Kyle Rudolph on that same roster, with Kyle Rudolph also getting snaps. So there you're going, okay, well, I mean, now Kyle Rudolph going over to New York. Yes, we had some concerning quotes from the coaching staff at the beginning of the year. We had some concerning quotes saying that Tyler Conklin is going to be in on a significant amount of plays, that he is actually going to be running a lot of 2 tight end sets. Now I think that's probably not going to happen. And I think this is going to be he's probably not going to be out for this season. I would be surprised if that was actually what we ended up getting news of later today. But I think we have to operate under the assumption that you're actually going to be without Irv Smith for at least a month into the year. And what's probably going to end up happening is we're probably going to have Adam Thielen having to rise up our rankings. Because if you were looking at where these receivers operate on the field, I don't necessarily think that this can help Justin Jefferson that much. I mean, with the Justin Jefferson, we know that he was already seeing a ridiculous amount of targets. Regardless, we know with the Justin Jefferson, this is also someone that was going to be incredibly efficient with those targets, but he didn't have the largest role in the red zone. Maybe this changes that. I actually think that this just makes an Adam Thielen a significantly safer option in terms of if you're going to be going and trying to get a receiver that you can bet on getting some of that red zone usage. And I actually just made a video talking about Adam Thielen, thinking about, well, with Adam Thielen, he's a clear fade in fantasy football in 2021. He's a clear fade given the fact that you are going to have Irv Smith stepping up into a role where he's most likely going to take some more targets in the red zone, because that's what's made Adam Thielen so impactful in fantasy over the past few years. It's actually going to be Adam Thielen's role once they get inside the 20-yard line, not necessarily because Adam Thielen is some elite talent at the receiver position. It's more so that he just has an incredible touchdown rate, even if he's not getting a lot of volume. And we know that you want to be fading that touchdown rate season to season, but I actually think that now Adam Thielen and that projected touchdown rate, especially if Irv Smith is out for the year, that has to be there. And also, I very rarely say this. I mean, usually if you see an injury to a starting tight end, I mean, it's very hard to say that it's going to actually help the running back in that scenario, because we know that those tight ends, they can improve the run blocking efficiency. Like if you had all of a sudden George Kittle going down again for the 49ers this year, that would be brutal for Trey Sermon. It would hurt Trey Sermon to an extreme. However, I mean, with an Irv Smith on the other hand, I actually think that's not going to be the case, because with an Irv Smith, he's not someone that you're getting excited with what he can do in terms of blocking for Dalvin Cook. And instead, he is someone that I think the Vikings would be a little more confident in skewing a little more pass happy once they got to the goal line, if they knew that they were going to have Irv Smith in the end zone that they could look to go through the air. So very rarely am I saying this, but I actually think an injury to Irv Smith, if he is out for the season, if he is even out for the first month or two, this could impact just Dalvin Cook in terms of how many carries he's going to be getting at the goal line, because Irv Smith also not stretching the field, not picking up a ton of first downs. While yes, it does suck, and maybe the efficiency of the offense slightly dips, it's not necessarily going to be as impactful as what you would have with like a Justin Jefferson injury, where of course if Justin Jefferson gets hurt, yeah, this team is going to go really downhill. I mean, all of a sudden, you're going to have a much harder time drafting Dalvin Cook over Alvin Kamara with confidence. But now that you actually have Irv Smith getting hurt, I don't think it hurts the offense that much. And I think maybe I'm overthinking this, but they decide to skew a little more run heavy at the goal line. So I think that this, in theory, hurts Kirk Cousins, because now Kirk Cousins has one less passing option. Maybe they don't necessarily call as many passing plays. I think this helps Adam Thielen, given the fact that Adam Thielen is going to have a safer role in that red zone. Obviously, this helps Tyler Conklin. I do not think you can draft him in a regular fantasy football format. Like if you had access to the waiver wire, if you had access to just going out there and picking up the hot tight end every single week, Tyler Conklin's still not going to be someone that I think you're that interested in drafting. However, if you're playing in dynasty fantasy football, where we know that you have a significantly larger bench, if you're playing in just say an underdog draft that I'm in right now, I'll show y'all actually this underdog draft in terms of what we had with Adam Thielen and Justin Jefferson going, because this draft is getting completed after the Irv Smith Jr. injury. So I'm currently in a real money fantasy football draft. Like if you keep on looking at me, look off the screen, it's because I'm in a real money fantasy draft. I'll show y'all what this draft board actually looks like now that we have this injury. Like if I pull this up right now, I mean, we actually have Justin Jefferson going in the same exact range he always goes at. He goes at the 2-3 turn. We have Adam Thielen also going at the 501. I think now with this injury, Adam Thielen is someone that you have to be taking over a Jamar Chase, and I'm not going to be thinking about that too much. Yeah, so Adam Thielen, I think, was a very good pick there. And also on Underdog Fantasy, I think now you actually have to consider drafting Tyler Conklin in one of the last rounds, because this was already a tight end that was getting some buzz just around him based on the fact that he could be in a lot of 12 personnel. He could be in a lot of 2 tight end sets. But now that he could also just be the tight end 1 to either start the season or potentially through the entire season based on the route with surgery that they decide to go with, now all of a sudden he is someone that I think we need to be rising up our rankings. And if I pull up my tight end rankings, y'all know that we are going to go through and we are going to make that update later today once we get news. Okay, guys, keep in mind as I pull up these rankings, if y'all do not have access to our 2021 fantasy football rankings or tiers, literally, it's the easiest thing ever. All you have to do is make a $10 deposit on Underdog Fantasy with promo code FLOCK. This is where I'm drafting now. This is where I draft in the live streams every single night. You get access to our 2021 fantasy football rankings, our tiers, our draft guide, which is going to be updated all the way to the start of the season. So make sure you go out, use promo code FLOCK on Underdog Fantasy. When you do that, make that $10 deposit. Not only do you get all of that information, not only do you get those hundreds of pages, but at the same time, I mean, you're also really supporting the channel. And it's a lot easier than me just going out and going, okay, well, we're selling our draft guides. We're selling our rankings for $75 this year. No, all I'm asking is for a $10 deposit on Underdog Fantasy. with promo code FLOCK. And let me pull up where I currently had Irv Smith ranked. So I actually looked at my exposure of Irv Smith on Underdog Fantasy. I've drafted Irv Smith in 13.2% of leagues. So considering my exposure between Cam Akers, Travis Etienne, J.K. Dobbins, I had in over 10% of my leagues. Yeah, J.K. Dobbins, I had in 10.6% of my leagues. And now Irv Smith. If I can just turn out a profitable season this year, I'm going to be happy. I think that this may be the first year that we lose money in fantasy football, really, since becoming a high-volume fantasy football drafter in 2014. So this may be a very ugly season for us. So that is something that we're having to just kind of eat at this point. And it hasn't even been week 1, and we're already kind of having to roll over and take an L just because this season has been so brutal, more particular this preseason. And if you're looking at where we currently had Irv Smith ranked, we actually had him ranked as the tight end 13. Now, I think this is most likely going to drop all the way down behind the Rob Gronkowski, behind the Cole Kmet, behind the Hunter Henry, behind Gerald Everett, Jonnu Smith, Adam Trautman. Yeah, so we're going to have to dramatically lower down Irv Smith Jr. in our rankings. I don't necessarily think that we can end up just ranking Tyler Conklin as a top 20 tight end. That's what I'm saying. If you're playing in a shallow format, not going to be too intrigued with him. Now, if I go, not moving Justin Jefferson at all in our rankings, but if I pull up Adam Thielen with where we currently have him, 1 second, let me switch over to this page for the receivers. So if I pull up where we have Adam Thielen, we have Adam Thielen ranked as our wide receiver 26. I think that we're actually probably going to end up moving him to our wide receiver 23. Just automatically right now. Now, if we get word that Irv Smith Jr. is out for the entire season, we're going to bump him up to our wide receiver 22. He's going to go up a tier, and he's going to go ahead of Tyler Lockett, Deontay Johnson, Jamar Chase, Laviska Shenault. I was low on Adam Thielen to begin with, but this injury is going to make it a lot safer to bet on Adam Thielen having a much higher touchdown rate than we initially thought. So yeah, we are going to have to move Adam Thielen up from that ranking of wide receiver 26. Running back's going to be obviously really hard to move. Dalvin Cook, we already have him at the 102, but I mean, maybe if you're playing in an auction format, you actually consider spending more money on a Dalvin Cook. So yeah, this is brutal. We have some people in the live chat right now saying, are we getting Zach Ertz to the Minnesota Vikings? Zach Ertz to the Vikings, I actually think that would be a very good fit considering the fact that, they need that tight end. They miss out on Kyle Rudolph. And now, obviously they're expecting Irv Smith to take that significant jump up in year 3, which I do not think is going to happen. Even if he only misses the beginning part of the season, this is going to be a tough injury to come back from. And obviously missing all that practice time, missing that time in training camp. Let me look this up one more time before we end this live stream to make sure that we don't have any updates on this injury. Yeah, so there are 2 potential outcomes for the Minnesota Vikings tight end Irv Smith Jr. If the surgery is meniscus, fancy word I don't know, then he'll be out 2 to 4 weeks. If the surgery is a meniscus repair, then he'll be out for the season 6 to 8 months. So yeah, if he's out 2 to 4 weeks, still, that's going to be brutal in just terms of him getting back and implemented in the game plan, because obviously this was an offense that we had to be concerned with, even if they were going to allow him to run that many routes, get that many targets, see that many snaps. So all of a sudden, Irv Smith, he has to lower down your rankings regardless. Now, as soon as we have word on what is actually going to happen with an Irv Smith Jr., I will go out there and I will update those rankings for everybody on Patreon, everybody that has used promo code FLOCK on Underdog Fantasy. But yeah, guys, like I said, we're going to be live tonight with some real money fantasy football drafts. If anybody wants to come out and see exactly where Irv Smith Jr. is getting drafted, exactly where Dalvin Cook, exactly where Minnesota Vikings players are going, make sure you drop a like on this live stream, subscribe to the channel, and if you want to come out to that live stream later tonight, make sure you hit the bell next to the subscribe button. That way you can come out, and that way you can hang out with us in the live chat, getting some real money fantasy football drafts. And yeah, that's all I got for you, my dudes. Make sure you subscribe, drop a like on the channel, and I will see y'all in the live stream tonight.